Moon Knight has been one of the best projects out of the MCU in 2022, and its leading man Oscar Isaac is a big reason why. But did you know that Oscar Isaac only signed up for one season with Marvel? In this video, we'll dive into Oscar Isaac's relatively short-term contract and how it differs from other actors working with Marvel. Let's look at the terms of Oscar Isaac's agreement. Moon Knight wasn't the first project Oscar Isaac worked on with Disney. It can be easy to forget that the Marvel movies and shows are technically created by the same Sith Lords who own the Star Wars franchise. Isaac was obviously a lead member of the Star Wars sequel trilogy cast, and he's made it a little clear that he doesn't like how those movies turned out. So it was a bit of a surprise to see him fronting the Moon Knight show. We have to imagine that the limited nature of his commitment to Marvel was part of what enticed him to sign up. It turns out that his contract only covers the 6 episodes of the Moon Knight show, and that too just for one season. Based on what Isaac himself and showrunner Jeremy Slater have said, Marvel Studios doesn't really have any plans to continue the Moon Knight story, and that may well be how Isaac likes it. Through various interviews and statements, Isaac has indicated that he loved working on the show. It was obviously a very compelling challenge for him to portray two completely different individuals in the same body, and he also enjoyed the creative freedom that the writer's room of the show had to basically do whatever they wanted. But after all that heat he endured during his Star Wars stint, he probably appreciated the low stakes of working on Moon Knight. For our part, we love the show too, and for exactly those reasons. And we wouldn't want there to be any more Moon Knight at all if Oscar Isaac isn't the one to don the suit again. Because of his limited term engagement, the question of a season 2 is very much up in the air. So what does that mean for Moon Knight and the Marvel Universe? In the most general sense, it simply means we won't get a second season of the Moon Knight show. However, because the show is so disconnected from the rest of the Marvel Universe, there are further-reaching effects of this as well. We won't get to see any more of the Egyptian pantheon of gods. The MCU got one of its newest superheroes with the Scarlet Scarab, and her story will also be left in the dark. There's no reasonable way to bring those elements into any other Marvel story, other than Thor maybe, so either they're explored on the Moon Knight show, or we forget about them. One of our favorite things about the Marvel Universe is its interconnectedness, when characters cameos in each other's movies and shows. It reflects the fact that all these superpowered folks are living in a single world, and these characters can sometimes elevate the stories they feature in. Would Spider-Man No Way Home be as cool without Doctor Strange? Could Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness have a better villain than Scarlet Witch? These crossovers happen because all these stories take place in the same world. But the thing is, those kinds of crossovers and cameos can only happen because the actors involved have long commitments with Marvel Studios. The length of their commitments isn't even measured in time. It's measured in the number of movies. Robert Downey Jr. famously had 3 Iron Man movies and a number of supporting roles in his contract, and it's the same for the other actors. Since Oscar Isaac is off the hook now, we can't expect to see him appearing in other projects, and that keeps his supporting cast out of the story too. For instance, it's a bit weird that Gore the God Butcher didn't take much interest in Butcher and Khonshu or Amit, and Marvel fans have long been clamoring for a Midnight Suns movie or show, but you can't have that without Moon Knight. Is there any hope at all that Oscar Isaac might come back? The only one who knows for certain is Kevin Feige, and to his credit, the man has proven himself to be a shrewd negotiator. When he needs a certain actor to stay on board for a number of movie appearances, he has a real knack for getting them to go along with his vision. Robert Downey Jr. actually happens to be an example of that too, agreeing to continue as Iron Man after his 3rd solo movie. If Feige really wanted more to do with Moon Knight, he could certainly get Oscar Isaac on board somehow. The real question is if Feige has any plans for Moon Knight at all. From fans to the people who actually worked on the show, everyone has been questioning what's next for Khonshu's Fist of Vengeance. And yet, Feige has stayed mum. That's probably a bad sign, but we're keeping our hopes up. Now in other news. So what really happened to Arthur Harrow? If you stuck around till the end of Moon Knight's last episode, things didn't quite end well for Ethan Hawke's Arthur Harrow. Normally in the MCU, dead is dead. But that isn't really the case for this particular show. After all, Moon Knight himself died at one point before going through a long 2-episode process to return to the living. Could that happen for Harrow too? Hawke certainly thinks so. While doing promo for his amazing new movie, The Black Phone, he was asked by comicbooks.com Chris Killian if Arthur Harrow was really dead. His reply was, "Sure, doesn't seem dead to me." Now, isn't that intriguing? That wasn't all the intriguing news Hawke had, as he had also waffled on the question of what's next for the Moon Knight story. He said that he appreciated that it worked as both sides a limited series as well as the beginning of something larger. If only we could meet him to ask what exactly he meant by that. If Moon Knight does return though, we'd love to see Arthur Harrow back too. While Oscar Isaac gets a lot to the credit of his acting on the show, Ethan Hawke was definitely pulling his weight as well. Up next, guess who almost cameoed in Moon Knight? We've talked a lot about how Moon Knight is rather disconnected from everything and everyone else in the MCU, and that's a quality it shares in common with another MCU release from this year. According to showrunner Jeremy Slater, these two worlds were going to be connected through an extended sequence of ancient Egypt featuring none other than the Eternals. This hypothetical cameo started with the fact that, in the original version of the script, Stephen Grant was working in the very same museum where Dane Whitman worked. That would have led to a long scene featuring Kamal Nanjiani's Kingo and Lauren Ridloff's Makari. The scene would have dealt with the original fall of Amit and the death of Alexander the Great. Now that we've heard of it, we really wish it happened. The reason why this scene was canned, budget, naturally. This would have been a big and complex scene featuring expensive actors. and getting it done would have meant taking away from the other things that Slater wanted to put in the show. He ultimately decided that making Moon Knight cool enough in isolation was better than including these references to the wider MCU. We won't argue with the results. Moon Knight is a dope show, but we can't help but wonder what things would have been like if this Eternals cameo happened. A lot of people who watched Eternals struggled to figure out what was the point of telling that story. Those characters could probably use a bit more of a connection to the other characters. But what do you guys think? Give it to us in the comments section. Finally, Moon Knight has turned out to be Marvel's Emmy darling. It's been a slow going for the MCU to get acknowledged by the major Hollywood award ceremonies, but it looks like they're finally getting there. And at the 2022 Emmy Awards, Moon Knight is set to make a big sweep. Marvel's most off-the-wall show has bagged a whopping 8 nominations at this year's Emmy Awards. The show is nominated for categories including Best Costumes, Stunt Performances and Coordination, Sound Editing and Mixing, and the Original Score. And while Oscar Isaac got snubbed for Best Actor, F. Murray Abraham's performance as Khonshu was nominated for Best Voiceover. Good on the Emmys for appreciating everything Moon Knight had to offer. While Moon Knight got the most Emmy noms for any Marvel show, it won't be alone at the ceremony. Loki is trailing Moon Knight pretty closely with 6 nominations, while Hawkeye managed to score 2 as well. We're really curious to see which of these shows can win in their categories because they're all some of the best MCU shows yet. That's it for today's video. What do you think of Oscar Isaac making such a short-term commitment with Marvel? Do you appreciate that it frees up the actors to take on other roles? Or do you regret that we get less cameos because of it? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.